Empress Valithra Corone had conquered 12 star systems before she turned 1,000 years old. Her species, the Sithari, lived for thousands of years, and she had spent most of hers at war. She was tall, nearly 8 feet, with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed like dying stars. When she walked into a room, everyone fell silent. When she spoke, worlds trembled. She was beautiful in the way a storm is beautiful, dangerous and possible to ignore. The Sithari were the most powerful species in the known galaxy. They had never lost a war. They had never signed a treaty they did not want. They had never bowed to anyone. And Valithra was the greatest of them all. She had earned names that made other species shiver. The Silver Death. She who silenced the void, conqueror of the burning nebula. She wore these titles like jewelry, so when the Galactic Accord told her she must accept a human guard, she laughed so hard that her advisors worried she had gone mad. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were small, weak, and lived for barely 100 years. The Sithari found them amusing, like clever pets that had learned to build spaceships. Useful for simple tasks, perhaps, but nothing more. The Galactic Accord was a peace treaty between hundreds of species. One of its rules said that all ruling houses must exchange security personnel. This was meant to build trust between empires. Valithra thought it was stupid, but she agreed because it made her look cooperative. And looking cooperative sometimes made conquest easier. She requested one human guard, just one. She wanted the galaxy to see how generous she was, accepting these weak creatures into her palace. She expected someone loud and confident, someone she could mock and break for entertainment. Instead, she got Marcus Chen. Marcus arrived on a gray transport ship with nothing but a small bag and a uniform that seemed too big for him. He was average height for a human, which meant he barely reached Valithra's chest. His hair was black and cut short. His skin was brown, weathered by years of something he never talked about. His eyes were dark and always looking at the floor. When he first stood before the throne, he did not speak. He did not meet the Empress's gaze. He simply bowed, stated his name and assignment, and then stood still like he wished he could disappear. The Sithari court found this hilarious. They called him the Mouse because he was so quiet and small. They made jokes about him at dinner parties. They would walk past him and pretend to be scared, laughing at their own cleverness. One young noble even threw a drink at him to see if he would react. Marcus simply wiped his face, said nothing, and continued standing at his post. Valithra watched this from her throne, mildly amused. She had expected defiance from the human, some spark of pride she could crush. Instead, she got nothing. He was boring. He was invisible. He was exactly what she thought humans were, forgettable. She assigned him to stand outside her quarters during the night shift. It was the most useless position in the palace, given to guards who were not trusted with real work. Marcus accepted the assignment without complaint. He stood there every night for 12 hours, never moving, never speaking, never causing trouble. Weeks passed, then months. The court forgot about the human. He was just part of the furniture now, as interesting as a lamp. Even Valithra stopped noticing him. She had wars to plan, systems to control, enemies to destroy. One quiet human was not worth her attention. But if anyone had been watching closely, and no one was, they would have seen strange things about Marcus Chen. They would have noticed that his eyes, while always downcast, were never still. They moved constantly, tracking every person in every room. They would have noticed that he knew the patrol schedules of every guard in the palace, even guards who worked on the other side of the building. They would have noticed that he had memorized every exit, every window, every ventilation shaft. They would have noticed that when he walked. His footsteps made no sound at all. Late at night when the palace slept, Marcus would sometimes stand at his post and let his mask slip just a little. His shoulders would straighten. His eyes would sharpen. For just a moment, he did not look like a mouse. He looked like something else entirely, something dangerous wearing the disguise of something weak. Then the moment would pass, and he would be invisible again. Marcus had volunteered for this mission. No one had forced him. Back on Earth, his commanding officers had been shocked when he requested the posting. The The Cytheri Palace was considered the most dangerous assignment in human space. The aliens there hated humans. Previous diplomatic guards had been bullied, beaten, and in 2 cases had simply disappeared. But Marcus had insisted. He had walked into his commander's office, spoken quietly for 10 minutes, and walked out with approval. No one knew what he had said. No one asked. What Marcus wanted was simple. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to stand in a corner and be forgotten. He wanted to protect something, anything, without having to hurt anyone. He had spent 30 years doing terrible things for Earth's government, things that had broken something inside him. Things that still woke him up at night, covered in sweat, reaching for weapons that were not there. He was tired. So deeply tired. In this posting, this joke assignment guarding an alien empress who would never notice him, seemed like peace. He did not know that fate had other plans. He did not know that in 3 months, everything would change. He did not know that the arrogant empress who looked through him like glass would one day see him more clearly than anyone ever had, and he did not know that the skills he had tried so hard to bury the violence he had locked away in the darkest corners of his mind would soon be the only thing standing between Velithra and death. For now, he simply stood at his post, quiet and forgotten, watching the shadows with eyes that had seen too much. The mouse waited, and somewhere in the dark, danger was already moving toward the throne. The Night of Crimson Veils was the most important celebration in the Cythari Empire. It happened once every 50 years, marking the anniversary of their first great conquest. For one night, the palace became the center of the galaxy. Ambassadors from 100 worlds traveled across space to attend. Nobles wore their finest clothes. Servants prepared food for 10,000 guests. Everything had to be perfect. Empress Velithra sat on her throne of crystallized starlight, looking down at the sea of guests below. She wore a gown made of woven shadows and light, and a crown of black diamonds that had belonged to 17 empresses before her. She looked magnificent. She looked untouchable. She looked bored. This celebration was the same as every celebration before it. Guests would bow. Guests would offer gifts. Guests would tell her how wonderful she was while secretly hoping she would die. Velithra knew all of this. She played the game because she was good at it, not because she enjoyed it. The throne room was enormous, big enough to hold a small city. 10,000 floating lanterns drifted near the ceiling, casting everything in warm red light. The walls were made of black obsidian that reflected the lanterns like stars. At the far end, the great doors opened again and again as more guests arrived. Marcus stood in his usual place, the corner. He wore the formal version of his guard uniform, which was slightly less wrinkled than his regular uniform. No one had told him to attend the celebration. No one had told him not to. So he stood where he always stood, invisible, watching. He watched the nobles laughing too loudly at jokes that were not funny. He watched the ambassadors whispering secrets to each other while pretending to admire the decorations. He watched the servers moving through the crowd with trays of food and drink, their movements precise and practiced. He watched one server whose movements were wrong. Marcus did not react. He did not tense or narrow his eyes. He simply watched the way he had been trained to watch, while his mind processed information faster than most computers. The server was male. Tall for his species, wearing the standard white and gold uniform. He carried a tray of drinks, moving from guest to guest with a pleasant smile, but his hands were wrong. A real server held the tray from below, using their palm to support the weight. This man held the tray from the sides, gripping the edges. That was how you held something you were not used to carrying. Marcus watched the man's feet. Real servers moved in efficient patterns, covering the most ground with the least steps. This man was circling. He was moving slowly but steadily toward one destination, the throne. Marcus watched the man's eyes. Real servers looked at their trays, at the guests, at the floor running where they might trip or spill. This man's eyes never left the Empress, not once. Not even when a drunk noble stumbled into him. Marcus watched the man's hip. There was a slight bulge under his uniform, hidden by the flowing fabric but visible if you knew what to look for. The shape was wrong for a serving tool. It was right for a weapon. All of this took Marcus's 3 seconds to see. He had about 10 seconds to act. The throne room was huge, and Marcus was far away. The Scythery guards were closer, but they were useless. They were too busy looking impressive to look for danger. They stood like statues in their ceremonial armor, watching the crowd with bored eyes. None of them had noticed what Marcus had noticed. Marcus started walking. He did not run. Running would cause panic. Running would alert the assassin. He simply walked, moving through the crowd with the same invisible presence he had cultivated for months. Guests did not notice him. Guards did not notice him. He was furniture. He was nothing. The assassin reached into his uniform. Marcus moved. Later, witnesses would argue about what they saw. Some said the human had teleported. Some said he had moved so fast that he had become a blur. Some said they had blinked and missed it entirely. The truth was simpler. Marcus Chen had spent 30 years learning to cross distances without being seen. He had killed people in rooms full of watchers without anyone noticing until the body hit the floor. Crossing 40 feet in a crowded throne room was easy. The assassin drew a plasma blade, a weapon that could cut through any armor in the galaxy. He raised it toward the Empress, his face twisted with hatred. He was Vrixer, a species that had fought the Scythery for 400 years. His people had lost everything to Velithra's empire. He had trained his entire life for this moment. He never got to complete his strike. Marcus appeared between the assassin and the throne like a ghost materializing from smoke. The plasma blade came down. Marcus did not try to dodge. There was no time. Instead, he stepped into the strike. Letting the blade sink into his left shoulder instead of continuing toward Velithra's heart, pain exploded through his body. He ignored it. His right hand closed around the assassin's wrist. He twisted. The assassin's elbow broke with a sound like snapping wood. The plasma blade fell. Marcus caught it before it hit the ground, reversed it, and pressed it against the assassin's throat. The whole thing took less than 2 seconds. The throne room went silent. 10,000 guests stared at the scene before them, trying to understand what had happened. The Scythery guards finally reacted, rushing forward with weapons drawn. It's far too late to matter. Marcus stood there, bleeding badly, holding a weapon to an assassin's throat. His face completely calm. He looked at the Empress for the first time since he had arrived at the palace, really looked at her, meeting her glowing eyes with his dark ones. Then his legs gave out. The plasma blade had been coated with poison. Not just any poison, but a neural toxin specifically designed to kill Scythery royalty. It would not kill a human, but it would come close. Marcus collapsed onto the obsidian floor, his blood spreading around him like a dark red flower. Velithra moved without thinking. She left her throne, something Empresses never did during ceremonies, and knelt beside the fallen human. His eyes were already closing. His breathing was shallow, but he was still looking at her, still watching. As if making sure she was safe was more important than staying alive. The palace medics rushed forward. Guards dragged away the assassin. Nobles whispered and gasped. But Empress Velithra did not hear any of it. She was staring at the blood on her hands. Human blood, and feeling something she had not felt in centuries. Confusion. This man had almost died for her. This invisible, forgettable, useless human had done what her entire guard force could not. He had seen the threat. He had stopped the threat. He had put his body between her and death without hesitation. Why? She did not know. But as she watched the medics carry Marcus away, she decided she was going to find out. The mouse had roared, and nothing in the Empire would ever be the same. Marcus woke up slowly, like swimming through thick water toward a distant light. His whole body hurt, especially his left shoulder, which burned with a deep, throbbing pain. He kept his eyes closed and listened, the way he had been trained to do. He heard the soft hum of medical machines. He heard the whisper of climate-controlled air. He heard breathing that was not his own. Someone was watching him. He opened his eyes. The room was beautiful. The ceiling was high and decorated with patterns of silver and gold. The bed beneath him was softer than anything he had ever slept on. Medical equipment floated around him, injecting medicines and monitoring his vital signs without wires or needles. This was not a normal medical room. This was the Royal Medical Wing. a place reserved for the most important people in the Empire. And sitting beside his bed, still wearing her celebration gown, was Empress Valithra. Marcus tried to sit up. Pain forced him back down. He tried again. Valithra put a hand on his good shoulder and pushed him down with gentle but firm pressure. "Do not move," she said. "The toxin is still leaving your system. The medics say you will live, but you need rest." Marcus stared at her. In 3 months, she had never spoken directly to him. He had not been sure she knew his name. "How long?" he asked. His voice was rough and weak. 3 days. You almost died twice. Your heart stopped the first night. The toxin was designed for Sithari biology, not human. It did not know how to kill you properly. This confused it. She said this calmly, as if discussing the weather, but her eyes told a different story. They were fixed on him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "The assassin?" Marcus asked, questioned and executed. "He was Varixari, sent by a faction that believes killing me will bring back their dead empire. It will not, but fanatics rarely understand logic." Marcus nodded slowly. He tried to remember what had happened, but the memories were fuzzy. He remembered the server. He remembered moving. He remembered pain. He remembered looking at the Empress and thinking that she was safe, and that was enough. "Why are you here?" he asked. Valithra tilted her head. It was a very human gesture, one she had probably never used before. "You saved my life. It is my job." "No, it was the job of my guards who failed. It was the job of my intelligence network who failed. It was the job of my security systems who failed. You had no responsibility. You were assigned to stand in a corner and be ignored. And yet you saw what no one else saw. You moved when no one else moved. You put your body between me and death." She leaned forward, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that he did not expect. She was confused. This ancient, powerful being who had ruled 12 star systems did not understand what he had done. "I need to know why," she said. "I need to know how. I need to know who you really are, Marcus Chen." It was the first time she had used his name. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He could lie. He could tell her what his official records said, that he was a standard diplomatic guard with standard training. But she would not believe him. Not after what she had seen, and somehow lying to her felt wrong. "I was a soldier," he said finally. "A special kind of soldier. The kind that governments pretend does not exist." Valithra said nothing. She waited. On Earth, there are units that handle problems quietly. Problems that cannot be solved with armies or diplomats. I was part of one of these units for 30 years. I did things that I cannot talk about. Things that I am not proud of. Things that broke something inside me. He paused, gathering strength to continue. The words were hard to say. He had never said them to anyone. 2 years ago, I had what doctors call a breakdown. My mind stopped working the way it should. I could not sleep. I could not eat. I could not stop seeing the faces of people I had killed. I was discharged from service and given therapy. The therapy helped a little, but I was still broken. Valithra listened without expression. Her species did not show emotion easily, but Marcus could see small changes in her posture, in the way she held her hands. "I volunteered for this posting because I wanted to disappear," he said. "I wanted to stand in a corner and be forgotten. I wanted to protect something without having to hurt anyone. I am tired of being dangerous. I am tired of violence. I thought that here, on the other side of the galaxy, I could finally be invisible." A small, sad smile crossed his face. "I suppose I failed at that." Valithra was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer. "You saved my life while wishing to fade into nothing. You used skills you hate to protect someone you barely know. You accepted pain and near death without complaint or expectation of reward." She shook her head slowly. "This is not something I understand. In my world, power is everything. You use your strength to take what you want. You crush your enemies before they crush you. You never sacrifice yourself for others, because others will never sacrifice themselves for you. This is how the Sithari have always survived." She looked at him with those glowing eyes, and for a moment, She seemed almost vulnerable. But you are not Cytheri. You are human. And humans are ... different. Marcus did not know what to say, so he said nothing. I have lived for 1,047 years, Velithra continued. I have conquered worlds. I have commanded armies. I have destroyed civilizations that threaten my people. In all that time, no one has ever done what you did. No one has ever protected me without wanting something in return. She stood up, her gown flowing around her like liquid shadow. I do not know what to do with this debt. In Cythari culture, saving a life creates a bond that cannot be broken. You are now tied to me, whether you want to be or not. Unsure how I feel about this, Marcus watched her walk toward the door. She stopped before leaving and looked back at him. Rest, heal. When you are better, we will talk again. I have many questions about humans, and I suspect you have answers that no one else can give. She left. Marcus lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he had gotten himself into. He had come here to be invisible. Instead, he had been seen and truly seen by the most powerful woman in 12 star systems. He should have been worried. He should have been planning his escape. Instead, he thought about the look in her eyes when she had asked why. That look of genuine confusion, that look that said she had never encountered anything like him before. Maybe, he thought, she was lonely. Maybe in all her centuries of power and conquest, she had never had someone who expected nothing from her. It was a strange thought, strange and dangerous. But then again, Marcus Chen had always been drawn to dangerous things. 6 months after the assassination attempt, the palace had changed in ways that no one could explain. It started small. The Empress began taking walks in the gardens, something she had not done in 200 years. She started eating dinner at normal times instead of working through the night. She laughed once during a council meeting, and 3 advisors nearly fainted from shock, and everywhere she went, the human guard followed. Not officially, of course. Marcus was still assigned to his useless post outside the royal quarters, but somehow the Empress kept finding reasons to visit that area. She would walk past his station and stop to ask questions. Small questions at first. What was Earth like? What did humans eat? Why did they sleep so much? Then bigger questions. What did Marcus believe in? What made him happy? What did he dream about? Marcus answered honestly, because lying to her still felt wrong. He told her about Earth's oceans, which she found fascinating because Cythari did not have large bodies of water. He told her about human music, and she spent 3 days listening to every genre she could find. He told her about coffee, and she ordered her scientists to figure out how to grow coffee beans in the palace gardens. In return, she told him about her life. She told him about the wars she had fought, the enemies she had destroyed, the heavy weight of a crown she had worn for 5 centuries. She told him that she could not remember the last time someone had spoken to her without wanting something. She told him that being Empress was the loneliest job in the galaxy. Do you not have friends? Marcus asked one evening. They were sitting in a private garden, watching alien flowers bloom in the light of 3 moons. Velithra made a sound that might have been a laugh. Empresses do not have friends. We have allies who want our power, enemies who want our death, and subjects who want our favor. Everyone wants something. That is how politics works. It sounds terrible. It is what it is. I stopped expecting anything different centuries ago. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I do not want anything from you. Velithra turned to look at him. I know. That is why I keep talking to you. You are the first person in 500 years who sees me as something other than a throne. Something passed between them in that moment. Something neither of them was ready to name. The court noticed, of course. The court always noticed. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. The Empress was spending time with the human. Empress was becoming soft. The Empress had not executed anyone for incompetence in months. This was wrong. This was dangerous. This would lead to disaster. Her advisors tried to intervene. Grand Vizier Thralox, a Cythari elder who had served for Empresses, requested a private meeting to discuss security concerns. Your Majesty, he said, bowing low, the court is troubled by your recent association with the human guard. The court is always troubled by something, Velithra replied. What specifically concerns them? He is a human, Your Majesty, a lesser species. It is not appropriate for someone of your status to spend time with such a creature. It makes you appear weak, makes the Empire appear weak. Velithra's eyes flashed dangerously. That lesser species saved my life when my own guards failed. When my own intelligence network failed. When my own Grand Vizier failed to detect an assassin walking through my throne room. Thralox went pale. Your Majesty, I only meant you meant to tell me how to behave. You meant to control me through social pressure. You meant to make me feel shame for having a conversation with someone who does not bore me. She stood up, and Thralox took an involuntary step backward. Let me be clear. I am the Empress. I will speak with whomever I choose. I will walk wherever I choose. If the court has concerns about my behavior, they are welcome to challenge me for the throne. Otherwise, they will keep their opinions to themselves. Thralox bowed and retreated quickly. But his eyes, as he left, were not submissive. They were calculating. Elsewhere in the Empire, other eyes were watching. Governor Threxel of the Outer Reaches had always been ambitious. He ruled 3 star systems, but he wanted more. He had been planning a coup for decades, slowly placing loyal officers in key positions, building alliances with other discontented governors. The assassination attempt had not been his work, but it had given him an idea. The Empress was distracted. The Empress was softening. The Empress was vulnerable. He began to move faster. In the capital, Marcus watched the shadows shift. He'd been trained to notice patterns, and the patterns he was seeing now were disturbing. Guards being reassigned, advisors having secret meetings, supply shipments being rerouted, communication arrays being maintained by unfamiliar technicians. He knew what a coup looked like. He had helped create several during his career. One night, after the palace had gone quiet, he spoke to Velithra in the garden. You are in danger, he said simply. She raised an eyebrow. I am always in danger. That is what it means to rule. No, this is different. Someone is making moves against you. Multiple someones. I have been watching the patterns for weeks. It is coordinated. It is well planned. It will happen soon. Velithra studied him. You are certain? I have seen this before? Many times. Signs are clear if you know what to look for. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I believe you. What do we do? Marcus hesitated. He had an answer, but he did not like it. I need to do something I promised myself I would never do again, he said. I need to be dangerous. Velithra reached out and touched his hand. It was the first time they had touched since she had pushed him back into his hospital bed. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished metal. I did not want to change you, she said. I did not want to make you into something you hate. Some things are worth being dangerous for. She did not pull away her hand. Neither did he. When the time comes, she said, I will be beside you. You are the Empress. You should stay safe. I am the Empress. I decide what I should do. Marcus smiled. It was a real smile, something he had not felt in years. You are stubborn. I prefer the term determined. It sounds more royal. They sat together in the moonlight, 2 people from opposite ends of the galaxy, preparing for a storm they could not avoid. And in the darkness, the storm gathered strength. The Eclipse Summit happened once every century. When all 12 system governors gathered to renew their loyalty to the throne, was the most important political event in the Empire held in the Grand Hall of Unity, a massive chamber where the light of 12 artificial stars shone down on the proceedings. Governor Threxel had chosen this day for his coup. The symbolism was perfect. In front of all the governors, he would remove Velithra from power and claim the throne for himself. Those who supported him would be rewarded. Those who resisted would be destroyed. He had planned everything carefully. Loyal soldiers had replaced the palace guards the night before. Communication arrays had been disabled to prevent calls for help. Escape routes had been sealed. 3 other governors had joined his alliance, bringing their personal armies. He outnumbered the loyal forces 10-1. Nothing could stop him now. The ceremony began like every Eclipse Summit before it. The governors entered in order of seniority, each bowing before the throne. Empress Velithra sat in her place, wearing her crown of black diamonds, looking calm and regal. Marcus stood in his usual corner, invisible as always. When the last governor had taken his place, Threxel made his move. "Before we proceed," he said, stepping forward, "there is a matter that must be addressed." Lithra raised an eyebrow. "Speak. The Empire grows weak under your rule. You have become soft. You spend your time with lesser species instead of governing. You have forgotten what it means to be Sithari." The hall went silent. This was not how governors spoke to empresses. Therefore, Threxel continued, "In accordance with ancient law, I declare this throne vacant. Your reign is over, Velithra. Step down, and you will be allowed to live in exile. Resist, and you will die here today." The doors burst open. Soldiers in black armor poured into the hall, weapons raised. They surrounded the loyal guards, who were outnumbered and outgunned. 3 governors moved to stand beside Threxel, their faces smug with anticipated victory. Velithra did not move. Her expression did not change. "You have planned this for a long time," she said calmly. "Decades, and now it ends. Surrender, Velithra. It is over." No, the word came not from the Empress, but from the corner of the room, from the invisible guard that no one had been watching. Marcus stepped forward into the light. He looked the same as always. Height, quiet face, unremarkable in every way. But something about the way he moved made people notice him. Something about his eyes made people uncomfortable. Threxel laughed. The mouse speaks. The human pet wishes to defend his mistress. How touching. I invoke the right of Cathari challenge. The laughter stopped. The right of Cathari was older than the Empire itself. It dated back to the time before starships, when Sithari tribes fought for dominance on their homeworld. Any being at all could challenge a usurper to single combat for the right to rule. The law had not been changed because no one had thought it needed to be. No lesser species had ever dared invoke it until now. "You cannot be serious," Threxel said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "The law does not specify species," Velithra said. Her voice was smooth, but her eyes were bright. "It specifies only a champion willing to fight for the crown. If you refuse the challenge, you forfeit your claim." Threxel looked at Marcus Reilly, looked at him for the first time. He saw a small human with no visible weapons. He saw someone who had spent 6 months standing in corners and being ignored. He saw an easy victory. "Very well. I accept." The soldiers cleared a space in the center of the hall. The governors and nobles pressed against the walls, eager to watch what they assumed would be a quick execution. Threxel drew his ceremonial blade, a weapon he had trained with since childhood. He was a warrior. He had killed dozens of enemies in personal combat. Marcus stood in the center of the circle, empty-handed. "You may use any weapon you choose," Threxel said magnanimously. "I would not want it said that I defeated an unarmed opponent." "I do not need a weapon," or laughter from the crowd. Threxel smiled and raised his blade. "Then let us end this quickly," he charged. What happened next would be debated for centuries. Some said the human had moved like water. Some said he had moved like smoke. Some said they had blinked and missed it entirely. The truth was simple. Threxel was a skilled warrior who had been trained in ceremonial combat. Marcus Chen was a weapon that humanity had spent 30 years perfecting. They were not in the same category. Threxel's blade cut through empty air as Marcus stepped to the side. Before the governor could recover, Marcus was inside his guard. A precise strike to the elbow made Threxel's arm go numb. The blade fell. Marcus caught it, reversed it, placed it against Threxel's throat. The entire fight lasted 11 seconds. The hall was silent. Everyone stared at the scene before them, the massive Sithari governor frozen in place. A tiny human holding a blade to his neck without any visible effort. "By ancient law," Marcus said, his voice calm and clear, "Governor Threxel has been defeated in Cathari challenge. His claim to the throne is forfeit. His life belongs to the Empress." He looked at Velithra. "What is your judgment?" Velithra rose from her throne and walked across the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She stopped in front of Threxel, looking down at him with cold eyes. "Exile," she said finally. "Strip him of his titles, his lands, and his armies. Send him to the border systems with nothing but the clothes he wears. Let him live with the knowledge that he lost everything to a human. She turned to the soldiers who had followed Threxel. They were staring at Marcus with expressions of shock and fear. As for you, you have a choice. Swear loyalty to me now, and you will be forgiven. Continue this rebellion, and you will face the same champion who just defeated your leader. One by one, the soldiers dropped their weapons. Later, when the hall had been cleared and the crisis had passed, Velithra found Marcus in the garden. He was sitting on a stone bench, staring at his hands. "You saved me again," she said, sitting beside him. "I had to be dangerous again. I promised myself I would not. Some things are worth breaking promises for." Marcus looked at her. In the light of the 3 moons, her silver skin seemed to glow. She was beautiful. She was powerful. And she was looking at him like he was the most important thing in the universe. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now everything changes." The galaxy watched what happened today. They saw a human defeat a Sithari governor in seconds. They will never look at your species the same way again. She took his hand in hers. Her skin was cool against his warmth. "And I will never look at you as anything other than what you are, the bravest, strangest, most remarkable person I have ever known. Your people will never accept this. Us. Whatever this is." Velithra smiled. It was a real smile, soft and genuine. Nothing like the cruel expressions she wore in public. "Then we will change their minds. Slowly, quietly, one day at a time." She paused. "I believe that is how humans do things." Marcus laughed. It surprised him he could not remember the last time he had laughed. Double quotes. "Yes, that is how we do things." They sat together as the moons moved across the sky, an Empress and a guard, 2 people who had found something neither of them expected. Behind them, the palace buzzed with activity as news of the day spread across the galaxy. Everything was changing. Everything would be different now. But in this quiet garden, there was only peace. The mouse had roared, and in doing so, he had changed the stars.